I'm Ryan from Leiths, and in this video I'm going to show you how to roll, shape and cook tortellini. I'm going to pick the sage leaves ready to fry in the butter, which will infuse and become nice and crisp. I will set that aside ready for frying while I get on and make my filling. I'm now moving on to make the ricotta filling. We're going to place the ricotta into a bowl and just start to loosen it a little bit. I'm going to add in parmesan, the ground black pepper, a little bit of salt, remembering that the parmesan is also going to give a salty taste, some freshly grated nutmeg, and some lemon zest. We can then combine all of the ingredients and we can taste the ricotta filling to make sure we're happy with the level of black pepper, nutmeg, lemon zest, and seasoning wise salt. I'm now going to juice the lemon ready for the sage butter. I'm not going to add any into the ricotta filling as this would make it too loose. I'm going to place the ricotta filling into my piping bag, which I've just sat into a jug, which will hold it and make it a little bit easier for me. And just making sure we're getting every last bit in there. And I'm going to put my ricotta filling into the fridge, ready for shaping up the tortellini. We're now going to roll and shape the tortellini. So before we do that, mise en place that I have ready, I have set up my pasta machine. I have a baking sheet ready to start to dry the shaped pasta on, some coarse semolina for the drying process, and some 00 flour for the rolling process. I have my pasta, which I have rested for a minimum of 20 minutes. And we're now going to go through the rolling process to the thinnest setting. Before we start rolling, we just need to make sure that the pasta machine is set up correctly. It is nice and secure on the bench with no movement. I'm just ensuring that the pasta machine is on the widest setting to start with, which on this machine is number 6, but on some pasta machines, the widest setting could be number 1. So it's important just to make sure that you check. I have my 200 gram quantity of rested pasta dough here. I'm just going to cut this in half, otherwise it will be too much to work with at one go. And it's important that when we're not working with pasta, that we're always keeping it covered. And this is to prevent it drying out and forming a leathery skin. This piece is going to continue to rest to the side. And we're now going to start to roll out half of our pasta. Before we get started, I'm just going to thin the pasta ever so slightly with the palm of my hand, and this is going to make it easier for it to start to pull through the machine at the start. And I'm encouraging it into a nice rectangle style shape, which will work nicely for the shape of the pasta machine as well. I'm going to put my pasta through the machine once to start with. And I'm going to fold it back in like a book, and this is just to encourage it to form some nice straight square edges, and also to start to help to build a little bit more of that chewing texture of that end result of the pasta. I'm going to put it in again, but this time with the opened end going first. And you can see now we're starting to get edges and corners that are a lot straighter and neater. And I can now start to go through the pasta machine again, but going down each setting one at a time. When going through, turning with one hand until most of the pasta is through, letting go, and then switching hands to pull the excess of the pasta out. My pasta at the moment feels a nice consistency. It's not sticky or tacky, so I'm going to continue going down through the settings. This is the penultimate setting, where you would go for a single layered pasta, but because we're making tortellini, we're going to have 2 layers of pasta on top of one another, so we need to go down to that final last setting. It does become a little bit more tricky to hold as you elongate the pasta. We've now gone through the very last setting of the pasta machine, and I don't know if you can see there, but I can just see my hands through the pasta. It's about 1 mil thickness, and I think that is a good thickness to use for the tortellini. If you were worried that it wasn't quite thin enough, you could go for that last setting once more, and it would just thin the pasta ever so slightly. Because my pasta is quite long, I'm going to cut it in half just to make it a little bit easier to work with. I'm also going to sprinkle a little bit of semolina down, and this is just going to help to stop the pasta from sticking to the table. It acts as ball bearings and it just keeps it from sticking onto the table. Now my pasta has been rolled out, it's resting on the semolina. I need to make sure I cover the pasta, and this is just going to stop it from drying out and going too brittle. So I'm going to use a little bit of cling film to do this, like so. And this can sit nicely while we roll the second half of our pasta. And we're going to do that in exactly the same way as we rolled the first half. I'm just going to lightly cover a baking tray with some semolina. This will be ready for my shaped tortellini to start drying. And we are now ready to start to cut the discs for the tortellini. The next thing we're going to do is to stamp, fill and shape the tortellini. To do this, we're going to work in a production line process. We're going to go through and stamp all of the pasta discs first, keeping all of them covered but working with a couple at a time. We're then going to go through the process of filling them all and shaping them to get them resting on the baking sheet. So to start with, I'm just going to unfold one of the sheets. I'm going to just start to stamp the little discs, making sure we're trying to get as much out of the pasta as possible with as little wastage. We're using a 7.5 centimeter cutter. You could go a little bit smaller, depending on the size you're wanting your tortellini to be, but it will become a little bit harder for the shaping process. And we're going to cover back over the discs that we've stamped, and this will stop them from drying out as we continue to then stamp the rest of the sheets. I'm now going to go through the shaping process, so I'm going to start off by shaping maybe a few at a time, making sure that I keep the rest covered, and this will stop them from drying out and going too brittle. So to do this, I'm just going to fold back the cling film. I'm going to cut a small hole in the bag. And the key here is just to make sure that we're consistent with the amount of filling that goes into each one, and also that we're not overfilling. So to start to fill, I'm going to go slightly off center, probably a ½ teaspoon's amount. I'm then going to bring this into my hand, and using a dampened finger, I'm just going to lightly wet 1/2 of the disc. The next step is to bring the top up and bottom up to meet the top, pinching. And as I seal it together, I'm working down and then out to expel any and all air inside, and just slightly pinching to seal and thin the very edge. It's important to make sure that you're expelling that air to ensure that it doesn't burst during cooking. I'm going to make a small indentation with my finger, lightly dampen the corner, and I'm bringing both the corners down to meet and slightly overlap one another, like so. And this is forming this neat little navel shape, like so. I'm going to place this onto my semolina lined tray, and this is going to allow the pasta to start to dry out slightly, ready for the cooking process. And the idea is that they sit nice and flat on the tray. We've now got our shaped tortellini. I also have my pan with 3 litres of water coming up to the boil, and we want to make sure we've salted that, and we work on about 10 grams of salt per litre of water. I've got my saute pan, which I will use to make my sage butter in, which I will also stop with a little bit of lemon juice. And I've got a baking tray with some white paper, which I will then use to drain the sage off so it becomes nice and crisp. While the pasta water is coming up to a boil, I'm going to start by making the sage butter. My butter is now starting to foam, so I'm going to add in the sage leaves. I'm just looking to spread them out nice and evenly so they start to release their moisture, infuse and become nice and crisp. We're also looking to achieve a light beurre noisette, and this is going to give you a rich, nutty, biscuity style flavour to the sage. You can see that foaming on the top of the sage leaves is indicating it's almost ready, and you can see that lovely nutty brown colour starting to develop. So I'm going to drain off the sage leaves. Making sure to disperse them, spread them out, allowing them to crispen up, and sprinkling with a very small pinch of salt just to help to absorb any excess oil and give a little bit of seasoning. So you can see in the base of the pan that the milk solids are nice and caramelized, and we're just going to stop that cooking process with a little bit of lemon juice. The sage is now ready to use. It can be used straight away, or once cooled, it could be kept in an airtight container and used within hours or a day or two. The water for the pasta is now up to a bubble, so I'm going to add in the salt to dissolve, because we don't want to reduce the quantity of liquid, therefore it become too salty. I'm going to use my spider to lower the pasta into the water. I'm going to cook this in 2 batches. The pasta is going to cook for approximately 3 to 5 minutes. We're looking for it to become tender, but still have that al dente bite and chew. The tortellini have now had about 3 to 3.5 minutes. They feel like they are nice and tender, and I'm now going to lift them out of the water and into my warming sage butter. I'm taking some of the dregs of the starchy pasta water with me, as this is going to help to emulsify with the fat and get a nice creamy coating consistency of that sauce. I'm adding a bit of extra starchy pasta water to the pan. We're warming the sauce through and emulsifying the starchy pasta water into the sauce. We're just going to do this for about 30 to 45 seconds, just to lightly coat the pasta. And we now want to have a taste of the sauce, just to make sure we're happy with the level of seasoning. I'm happy with the balance of acidity. It's going to cut through the richness of that ricotta filling. The seasoning level is nice as well. You've got a little bit of salty, starchy pasta water in, that's made it nice and creamy. And you've got that lovely nuttiness coming through from the beurre noisette as well. So I'm now ready to plate my pasta. Just to show you what to look for with the finished tortellini, you can see that the pasta should be even in both shape and size. The thickness is appropriate for what we are trying to achieve. The sage leaves are nice and green and vibrant. And as I cut into the tortellini, as you can see, there's no waterlogging or air pockets.